In a small rural town in Montana, 10-year-old Ethan had spent weeks in silence, watching his parents argue late into the night. The yelling, the crashing dishes, and the slamming doors had all become routine. He had tried to pretend it was normal. Everyone fought sometimes, right? But last night, when his father raised his voice louder than ever, and his mother cried uncontrollably, Ethan made a decision. He would leave. He had packed his school backpack with a water bottle, a flashlight, a hoodie, a sandwich from the fridge, and his favorite comic book. He scribbled a quick note, "Don't worry, I'll be fine. E." Then, just before dawn, while the town still slept and fog clung low over the ground, Ethan slipped out the back door. The air was cold, biting his cheeks, but he didn't look back. He knew every shortcut through the backyard, every loose fence post, and every quiet street to avoid being seen. His legs trembled with both fear and adrenaline. He didn't have a clear destination, only a single idea. Far enough to never hear them fight again. With each step, his small world grew bigger and more uncertain. Birds chirped quietly as the morning light filtered through the trees, but it felt like the world had turned its back on him. After hours of walking, Ethan reached the edge of town, past the last gas station and rusting train yard. There, the wilderness began. Thick woods, uneven dirt roads, and the whisper of isolation. He found a hidden spot near a dry creek and sat down on a rock, trying to convince himself this was freedom. But in his heart, he felt the first chill of loneliness. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, Ethan realized how quickly the day had vanished. His feet were sore and his stomach had started growling hours ago. He nibbled at his sandwich slowly, trying to make it last, though it was already stale. The forest around him buzzed with life, crickets, rustling leaves, and distant hoots of owls. But to Ethan, it all sounded like one big warning: you are alone. He curled up inside his hoodie and tried to rest against a tree trunk, but the cold dirt and jagged roots poked at his back. Every little sound made him flinch. Was that a bear? A snake? The flashlight in his bag gave off only a faint beam now, and he was afraid to use it too much in case the batteries died. Darkness felt endless. As the hours dragged on, Ethan's mind wandered back to his parents. He wondered if they had read his note. Were they worried? Had they even noticed yet? He imagined his mother crying again, not out of anger this time, but maybe out of fear or regret. That thought made his chest tighten, but he pushed it down. They won't care, he whispered to himself, though he wasn't so sure. At one point, he thought he heard footsteps, soft crunching on the leaves behind him. But when he turned to look, nothing was there. Just shadows stretching in the moonlight. The wind picked up and sent a chill through his bones. Shivering and afraid, Ethan finally drifted off into a restless sleep, curled like a small animal against the cold ground. Above him, the stars sparkled without a care, and deep in the trees, something else was watching, quiet, patient, and curious. Ethan woke up with a start. A distant snapping twig had jolted him from his sleep, and for a moment he forgot where he was. The air was colder now, and the forest had taken on a more menacing feel in the pale, early dawn light. His limbs were stiff, his hoodie damp with morning dew, and his throat dry. Fear crept back into his heart like a cold fog. He stood slowly, his eyes scanning the dense woods around him. Probably just a deer, he muttered to himself, but the doubt lingered. With every step he took, the leaves crunched beneath his sneakers, echoing louder than he liked. The once magical idea of adventure now felt heavy and overwhelming. He had no map, no idea where he was headed, and no one to talk to. By midday, he stumbled upon an abandoned gas station off a cracked country road. Its windows were broken, and ivy had begun to consume the rusted sign that read, "Buddy's Fuel and Snacks." Ethan looked around nervously before slipping through the broken door. Inside, the air smelled of mold and rot. Shelves stood half empty, but in a dusty corner, he found a can of peaches and a half-filled bottle of water. It felt like striking gold. As he sat on the floor and opened the can with a pocket knife he'd brought from home, he heard something outside, soft breathing maybe, or panting. Holding his breath, Ethan tiptoed to the door and peeked out. Nothing. Just trees swaying gently. But as he turned to go back inside, he caught a glimpse, just for a second, of something furry disappearing behind the building. His heart raced. Was it a dog? A wild animal? He didn't know. But it hadn't looked dangerous, just cautious. Curiosity wrestled with fear. Should he investigate or stay put? The rest of the afternoon passed slowly. Ethan stayed inside, occasionally peeking out, listening. He kept thinking about that animal. Maybe it's lost too, he thought. As night began to fall again, the loneliness started to weigh heavier than before. But somewhere deep inside, a strange hope was flickering. Like maybe he wasn't entirely alone in these woods, after all. As the sun dipped below the treetops, darkness swallowed the forest once again. Ethan used the dim light from his flashlight sparingly, careful not to drain the battery. The shadows outside the broken windows of the gas station seemed to shift and move, playing tricks on his tired mind. Every creak of the wind or crack of a branch made him sit upright, alert and tense. The stillness of the night was unsettling. He curled up in a corner behind a shelf, hugging his knees tightly. He missed his mother's voice, his dad's laugh, even his annoying little brother who never stopped asking questions. Regret hit him hard, heavier than he expected, but pride held him back from turning around. He hadn't come this far to go home empty-handed. He had to prove something, though even he wasn't sure what anymore. Suddenly there was a soft, rustling sound outside. Ethan froze. It wasn't the wind this time. It was slower, rhythmic, like paws brushing against leaves. Then came a low whimper, barely audible. Ethan slowly got to his feet and crept toward the window. He saw a shadow moving near the edge of the woods, just beyond the clearing. His heart pounded. He gripped his flashlight like a weapon and pushed open the door just a crack. "Hello?" he called into the dark. No answer, just the whisper of leaves rustling again. And then, from behind a bush, a small dog emerged. Its fur was matted and it limped slightly, but its eyes were wide, curious, and bright. It stopped a few feet away, staring at him. Ethan lowered the flashlight and crouched down. "Hey, buddy." "I'm not gonna hurt you," he whispered. The dog didn't move. For a long moment, they just stared at each other, two lost souls in the same forgotten place. Then slowly the dog inched forward, sniffed the air, and sat down. Ethan smiled for the first time in days. "You're alone too, huh?" he said softly. He pulled out the remaining half of the peach can and gently slid it toward the dog. It hesitated, then padded forward and began eating. The rustling in the dark hadn't been danger after all. It had been a friend. As the wind howled through the empty station, Ethan sat beside the dog, feeling the warmth of another presence, for the first time in what felt like forever. He didn't know where tomorrow would take them, but for tonight, neither of them would be alone. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the cracks in the boarded-up gas station, casting golden rays across the dusty floor. Ethan stirred from his spot beside the dog, who had curled up next to him during the night. For the first time since he ran away, he had slept without fear. There was something comforting about the steady breathing of his unexpected companion. He sat up and looked down at the dog. It was awake, watching him with soft brown eyes. "Guess we made it through the night, huh?" Ethan whispered. The dog wagged its tail weakly in response. Though it was clear the animal had been through a lot, its ribs were slightly visible and one paw was tender. The spirit in its gaze hadn't been broken. Ethan decided he couldn't leave it behind. He rummaged through the gas station shelves and found a nearly expired granola bar and a small bottle of water. He broke the bar in half, offering a piece to the dog, who devoured it gratefully. "I can't let you starve out here. If I'm going to keep going, I guess you're coming with me," he said with a smile. As they stepped out into the chilly morning air, Ethan noticed how quiet everything was. The wind rustled through the trees, but otherwise, the world felt still. He and the dog, whom he decided to call Rusty because of its reddish-brown patches, began walking along the edge of the woods, away from the road where he might be recognized. Along the way, Ethan talked to Rusty, telling him things he'd never said out loud to anyone. He spoke of how he missed his family but felt invisible at home. He shared his dream of becoming someone brave and important, someone who mattered. Rusty trotted beside him silently, occasionally glancing up as if listening. By mid-afternoon, Ethan stumbled upon an abandoned barn nestled behind a cluster of trees. It looked like it hadn't been touched in years. The doors hung loosely on their hinges, and weeds had claimed much of the area, but it was shelter. Inside, the barn smelled of old hay and forgotten time. A few broken tools lay scattered on the ground, and birds fluttered in the rafters. He found a corner where the hay was dry and cleared out a spot for them. Rusty immediately lay down, resting his head on Ethan's leg. The bond forming between them felt strange but deeply reassuring. Neither had planned this journey, but fate had brought them together. That evening, as the sun set in a blaze of orange and pink, Ethan looked at the stars beginning to appear. "We'll keep going tomorrow," he whispered. "Maybe we'll find somewhere safe. Or maybe someone's looking for us." Rusty nudged his arm gently, as if in agreement. Together, under a sky that seemed too big for just one lonely boy, they closed their eyes and drifted into sleep. No longer alone, no longer lost. The next morning, Ethan was awakened by Rusty's low growl. The boy rubbed his eyes and peeked through a crack in the barn wall. A pickup truck was slowly rolling down the dirt path nearby. Ethan's heart skipped a beat. He didn't recognize the truck, but something about its slow approach made him uneasy. He crouched beside Rusty and whispered, "Stay quiet, boy." Rusty obeyed, though his body remained tense, ears perked. The truck stopped just beyond the barn, and a man stepped out, scanning the area. He was tall, wearing a camouflage jacket, and looked rough, like someone used to chasing things that didn't want to be caught. Ethan's instincts screamed at him to run. He didn't know who the man was, but he'd heard stories about strangers in rural areas who didn't take kindly to trespassers. Holding his breath, he waited as the man walked slowly past the barn, glancing at the old structure. Then the man turned toward the woods and disappeared from view. Not wasting a second, Ethan grabbed his bag and gently urged Rusty to follow. They slipped out through the barn's rear opening and ran into the trees. His heart pounded as twigs cracked beneath their feet. Rusty stayed close, not making a sound except for the soft thud of his paws against the forest floor. After nearly an hour of weaving through the trees, Ethan finally slowed down. They were far from the barn now. He leaned against a tree, panting. "That was too close," he muttered. Rusty licked his hand as if to say, "You did good." For the rest of the day, they stayed deep within the forest, following a narrow animal trail. Ethan's legs ached and hunger gnawed at his stomach, but he knew they couldn't risk being seen again. At one point, they reached a shallow stream. Ethan took a long drink and let Rusty lap at the cold water beside him. The forest around them was alive with birdsong and the rustle of small creatures, but it still felt lonely. As dusk approached, Ethan found a hollow beneath an old pine tree. It wasn't much, but it would shield them from wind. They curled up together again, the bond between them stronger after the day's close call. "Wherever we end up," Ethan whispered into the dark, "we stick together." Rusty gave a soft bark in reply, and the two drifted off to sleep, unaware that their journey was about to take another unexpected turn. The morning sun filtered through the branches, casting golden rays over the forest floor. Ethan stretched his sore limbs and blinked against the light, while Rusty yawned beside him. They had survived another night, but Ethan felt the weight of exhaustion pressing down on him. He had no idea how long they could keep running like this. He picked up his backpack, which felt lighter each day as the food and water ran out. "We need to find people," Ethan said aloud. "The good kind." Rusty wagged his tail slightly, but Ethan could tell he was just as tired. They followed the faint animal trail again, hoping it might lead to a road or a town or anything. After hours of walking, Ethan heard a distant rumble. At first he thought it was thunder, but the sky was clear. Then he heard it again, this time more clearly. A train. His heart leapt. "Tracks!" he shouted. "If we find the tracks, we might find help." Rusty barked in excitement and picked up his pace. They pushed through the underbrush until they emerged onto a steep embankment. Below them, a pair of rusty train tracks stretched endlessly in both directions. A train was already far in the distance, its horn echoing faintly through the trees. Ethan scrambled down the slope with Rusty close behind. Walking along the tracks was easier than trudging through the forest, but it was also more exposed. Ethan kept glancing around, worried someone might spot them. The midday sun beat down on them relentlessly. His mouth felt dry, and Rusty was panting heavily. They needed water and shelter. As they followed the tracks, they passed an old, broken-down signal box. It looked abandoned, its windows shattered and the door hanging open. Ethan peeked inside and saw only dust, spiderwebs, and old equipment. "Let's rest for a bit," he said. They curled up in the shade, grateful for a break. Suddenly, a low growl escaped Rusty's throat. Ethan's head snapped toward the tracks, and that's when he saw it. Another train, but this one was much closer, and Rusty wasn't growling at the train. He was growling at the coyote that had emerged from the bushes on the opposite side of the tracks. Ethan froze. The animal's yellow eyes locked onto them, its body tense and hungry-looking. It stepped forward, snarling. Rusty immediately leapt in front of Ethan, barking ferociously. Ethan backed into the signal box, heart pounding. The coyote crept closer, but Rusty lunged with a bark so sharp it startled the creature. For a moment it hesitated, and then it ran off into the trees. Ethan dropped to his knees and hugged Rusty tightly. "You saved me again," he whispered. Rusty licked his face, tail wagging, proud and alert. The danger had passed, but it was clear now more than ever. Ethan needed to find a safe place soon. This journey was taking its toll on both of them. As night began to fall, they continued down the tracks, shadows stretching long behind them. The horizon glowed orange, and Ethan prayed they would reach someone, anyone, before another threat found them. As night blanketed the world in darkness once again, Ethan and Rusty continued walking along the train tracks, their shadows swallowed by the blackness behind them. The sounds of the forest changed. Crickets chirped, owls hooted, and the occasional snap of twigs kept Ethan on edge. His legs ached with every step, but the hope of finding someone, anyone, kept him going. Rusty trotted beside him loyally, ears perked at every unfamiliar sound. The wind picked up, carrying with it a chill that made Ethan wrap his arms around himself tightly. He glanced at Rusty, who was shivering slightly but remained by his side without complaint. "Just a little longer," Ethan whispered, as much to himself as to Rusty. They passed another stretch of overgrown rails, where vines crept over the tracks like nature trying to reclaim them. Suddenly, Ethan paused. Far ahead, past a bend in the tracks, he saw something faint but unmistakable. A small flicker of light. His breath caught in his throat. "Rusty, do you see that?" The dog tilted his head, then barked once. With renewed energy, Ethan began walking faster, his heart pounding with a mix of fear and excitement. The light grew brighter as they approached. Soon he could make out the outline of a small cabin nestled near the tracks, its front porch illuminated by a hanging lantern. Smoke curled gently from the chimney. It looked quiet, peaceful, almost like something out of a dream. "This might be it," Ethan whispered, eyes wide with wonder. Still cautious, Ethan approached slowly, staying in the shadows. He didn't want to scare anyone or be seen as a threat. Rusty stayed close, silent and alert. As they reached the edge of the clearing, the cabin door opened with a soft creak. An elderly man stepped out, wearing a flannel shirt and holding a cup of steaming tea. The man looked directly at Ethan, but instead of surprise or anger, his face softened with concern. "You lost, son?" he called gently. Ethan hesitated for a moment, then nodded slowly. "Yes, sir. I've been out here for days. I ran away. I didn't know where else to go." The man walked forward and knelt beside Rusty, who sniffed him and wagged his tail. "Seems like this fella's been watching over you." Ethan smiled faintly. "He saved me more than once." The man nodded, then stood. "Come on in, both of you. You look like you could use a warm meal and a bed." Inside the cabin, the warmth hit Ethan like a wave. The scent of soup simmering on a stove made his stomach growl loudly. The man chuckled. "You're just in time for dinner." He handed Ethan a wool blanket and motioned to the couch. "You can rest here tonight. Tomorrow we'll figure out how to contact your folks." Ethan sat down, overwhelmed with emotion. For the first time in days, he felt safe. Rusty curled up at his feet, eyes finally closing in peace. Ethan reached down and stroked his fur gently. "We made it, buddy," he whispered. Outside, the wind howled through the trees, but inside the cabin, all was calm. The first rays of sunlight crept through the cabin's small window, casting a golden hue over Ethan's sleeping face. For the first time in days, he had slept deeply, undisturbed by fear or hunger. Rusty lay curled at his feet, still sleeping soundly, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. The soft crackling of the fireplace and the scent of something frying on the stove gently pulled Ethan from his dreams. As he sat up, the elderly man, whose name he had learned was Walter, turned from the stove and smiled warmly. "Morning, son. You've got good timing. Breakfast is almost ready." Ethan rubbed his eyes and smiled shyly. "Thanks again for letting me stay," he said softly. Walter simply nodded. "You needed a place. That's reason enough." Rusty stretched and padded over to Walter, who bent down and offered him a slice of bacon. "This one's a hero," he said with a wink. "Looks like he's been protecting you every step of the way." Ethan nodded, reaching down to scratch Rusty behind the ears. "I don't think I would have made it without him." After breakfast, Walter made a call using his old landline. "I spoke with the local sheriff," he explained. "They've been looking for you. Your parents are worried sick, but they'll be here soon." Ethan's heart pounded with mixed feelings: relief, fear, and a little guilt. He wasn't sure how his parents would react after everything that had happened. While they waited, Walter took Ethan outside and showed him the small vegetable garden behind the cabin. "Helps keep me busy," Walter said. "And it's nice to grow something with your own hands." Ethan listened closely, enjoying the man's calm demeanor and gentle voice. It reminded him of the grandfather he never really got to know. Hours passed, and by afternoon, a car pulled up on the dirt path beside the cabin. Ethan's heart skipped a beat as he saw his mother and father step out, eyes filled with tears. His mother ran to him, dropping to her knees and pulling him into a tight embrace. "Ethan, oh, my sweet boy, we thought we'd lost you," she cried. Tears streamed down Ethan's face as he hugged her tightly. "I'm sorry, Mom. I just didn't know how to talk to you. I felt invisible," he confessed. His father joined them, placing a gentle hand on his son's back. "We should have listened more. We're just glad you're safe." Then Ethan turned to Rusty. "If it weren't for him, I don't know what would have happened." Walter stepped forward and knelt beside Rusty again. "You've got a rare soul, boy," he said to the dog, his voice full of emotion. Ethan's mother wiped her tears and looked at Rusty. "We can't leave him behind," she whispered. "He belongs with us now." Rusty wagged his tail as if understanding every word. The decision was unanimous. They would adopt Rusty, not just as a pet, but as a part of their family. Ethan smiled through his tears, finally feeling whole again. As they packed up to leave, he turned to Walter. "Thank you for everything." Walter placed a hand on his shoulder. "Just promise me you'll talk to them next time." Ethan nodded. "I will." With Rusty in the back seat and the forest slowly fading behind them, Ethan looked out the window at the sky. The storm had passed. A new beginning was waiting for them. The car's tires crunched softly on the gravel as they pulled into Ethan's neighborhood. The familiar sights, the old oak tree, the mailbox with peeling paint, the little park down the street felt different somehow, as if Ethan was seeing them through new eyes. He glanced at Rusty in the back seat, who looked calm but alert, his bright eyes watching everything around him. As they approached their house, Ethan's parents exchanged hopeful glances. The door opened before they could even knock, and Ethan's younger sister ran out, her face lighting up with joy. "Ethan, you're back!" she exclaimed, wrapping him in a tight hug. Ethan's heart swelled with warmth. This was what he had missed the most, the feeling of belonging. Inside, the house was buzzing with life. Ethan noticed the fresh coat of paint on the walls, new curtains, and pictures of family moments he hadn't seen before. His mother knelt beside Rusty, giving him a bowl of water and some treats. "Welcome home, Rusty," she said softly. Over the next few days, Ethan settled back into his routine, but things felt different. His parents listened more, smiled more, and made time for him. Rusty became a constant companion, following Ethan everywhere. They explored the backyard together, played fetch, and even slept side by side. One afternoon, Ethan found an old notebook in his room, filled with drawings and stories he had made as a child. Inspired, he began writing again, pouring out his feelings and dreams onto the pages. Rusty lay beside him as if guarding his creativity. As weeks turned into months, the bond between Ethan and Rusty grew stronger. The dog's loyalty and gentle presence helped heal the wounds of the past. Ethan learned to trust, to speak up, and to cherish the love around him. One evening, sitting on the porch with Rusty by his side, Ethan looked up at the stars. He felt a deep sense of peace. The journey had been hard, but it led him here, to family, to friendship, and to hope. Rusty nudged his hand, reminding him that no matter what, he was never alone. And in that moment, Ethan knew that this was just the beginning of a beautiful new chapter, one filled with love, adventure, and the promise of forever.